All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. It's Assuring Inspection Success presented by GovZilla and guest speaker and lead quality systems and compliance consultant, Steve Niedelman. If you have any questions during today's presentation, please use the Zoom chat feature and we'll answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A section at the end. After we're done, I'll send out a copy of the slides as well as answers to all the questions we received today. Before we begin, I wanted to quickly introduce everyone. My name is Taylor Meeks and I'm the event coordinator at GovZilla. We empower the champions of quality and safety with actionable data intelligence, trusted by 19 out of the top 20 pharma companies. We deliver actionable insights that accelerate regulatory compliance and quality decisions. We start with an unmatched data set that has been enriched and processed to make it usable and accessible. Our data is layered with powerful and expert model analytics that combine the latest machine learning algorithms with human domain expertise. Our customers worldwide enjoy intuitive search, clear reports, and powerful workflows through a cloud-based platform at their fingertips. Today's presenter, Steven Niedelman, serves as the lead quality systems and compliance consultant to the FDA Life Science Practice Team at King & Spalding, specializing in regulatory enforcement and policy matters involving industries regulated by U.S. Food and Drug Administration. He provides training and guidance to industry professionals on all FDA requirements, including quality system requirements, inspection preparedness, post-market obligations to executives about their management responsibilities, as well as FDA's expectations. Steven began his FDA career in 1972 as an investigator in FDA's New York District Office and retired in 2006 after a 34-year distinguished career. While he was at the FDA, he served as the Deputy Associate Commissioner for Regulatory Affairs and as Chief Operating Officer of the Office of Regulatory Affairs. He ensured consistent interpretation of FDA's regulatory policies by directly overseeing offices at the headquarters of the Office of Regulatory Affairs, including the Office of Regional Operations, Office of Enforcement, and Office of Criminal Investigations. Additionally, Mr. Niedelman assisted in the day-to-day management of FDA's nearly 3,400 field staff members and is responsible for investigative and laboratory operations. He currently participates as a member of Medical Devices Committee at the Food and Drug Law Institute and as a member of the Editorial Review Board for FDA's new GMP publications directed at the pharmaceutical and medical device industries. Mr. Niedelman has also served as Vice President of the FDA Alumni Association. Without further ado, I'll now pass it over to Mr. Niedelman to begin.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for that very kind introduction and welcome everybody. Thank you for taking your time to join us today to get an update as to what steps you need to take to assure inspection success while we are living in some wild times and unprecedented times. There is some comfort in knowing that FDA is not routinely doing any surveillance inspections right now, so it provides you a slight hiatus and opportunity to assure that your inspectional procedures and your folks are all aligned to know how to be best prepared for an FDA inspection going forward. And it'll probably be some time before they resume surveillance inspections just based upon all the activities that are ongoing with the pandemic. So I am the lead quality systems and compliance consultant at the law firm of King & Spalding here in Washington, D.C. I do want to make it clear up front that while I am associated with a law firm, unlike most of my colleagues, I am not an attorney. My background, as Taylor indicated, is based upon my experience with FDA. So we can go on to the next slide. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about provide an overview of FDA's inspection program, their authority to inspect, what you should expect during an inspection, and then most importantly, the do's and don'ts during an inspection to assure that your folks and yourselves are well prepared for how to deal with FDA's investigators, some of their idiosyncrasies, et cetera. So we can move on to the next slide. With the overview of FDA's inspection program, it's important for you to understand the role of FDA, their function, and their role in providing public health to the United States, and quite frankly, in assisting other countries as well, as they engage in various international standard-setting organizations and other inspectional programs that are acceptable throughout the world, whether you're on the medical device or on the pharmaceutical side. So understand FDA is a public health law enforcement agency whose charter is to bring safe and effective products to market as quickly as possible, but also assuring at the same time that they were manufactured, sold, and labeled correctly, that they're not misbranded, they're not misleading, and that the quality systems that were in place at the time of their manufacture assured consistency from batch to batch, lot to lot of product coming out the doors. The inspections typically assess the firm's conformance by reviewing and making sure that firms are executing to their written policies and procedures, and assuring that the outputs of the policies and procedures and the appropriate documentation that goes with it, as you're well aware, those who have been inspected by FDA, it's all about documentation. The three words you should clearly remember is document, 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 and ensuring that you can support and be able to provide justification and that your procedures are adequate and that you are following them. It's important, just as an overall view, FDA regulates about 25 cents of every dollar a U.S. citizen spends in the United States. If you think about that, that's a pretty enormous scope of product and responsibility with a relatively small staff. Next slide, please. So again, keeping in mind that FDA is not just a public health agency, but also law enforcement, the purpose of an FDA inspection, as they've outlined in their Inspectors Operations Manual, Investigations Operations Manual, or referred to as the IOM, and is available on www.fda.gov. It's a careful, critical, official examination of a facility to determine its compliance with laws. Inspections may be used to obtain evidence to support legal actions when violations are found. The tone of the definition unto itself, which is a long, well-established definition, is one that people should take heed to, as again, the tone and the focus is that if you are in violation of the act, if you are not following the GMPs or the quality system requirements that are established out there, their role is to document that evidence and consider it for perhaps some enforcement action to be undertaken by the agency. Next slide, please. So FDA's authority is based upon their appearance at your firm and under presentation of credentials. Some will have badges, some may not. If they're joining investigators from the field from headquarters, they still will have credentials, but no badges. And issue a notice of inspection or an FDA 482. Anything that's discussed or any information that they gather prior to issuance of that notice of inspection may not be used by the agency for any type of enforcement action or any type of consideration of enforcement action. So it's imperative that they issue that notice of inspection. They're allowed to conduct inspections without an inspection warrant. And this is how the statute is clearly written, to be able to inspect at reasonable times. And this is really considered the times and the hours that your facility is typically in operation. And within reasonable limits and in a reasonable manner, any factory, warehouse, or establishment in which devices or drugs are manufactured, processed, packed, or held for introduction into interstate commerce. And at the end of the day, your goal is not to have a list of observations issued, but if one is because of any kind of observations that were made during the inspection, they have an obligation to leave with you an FDA 483 at the conclusion of the inspection, which is discussed with top management to assure that there's a mutual understanding of what those observations are. Note that the term reasonable that's used throughout this definition is not defined by FDA. Typically, it's your normal course of business operations, your normal course of business hours, Sometimes investigators will ask you to stay open late so that they can accommodate a varied work schedule, such as not working every Friday. If you could stay for 10 hours Monday through Thursday, you are not obligated to do that. Some firms are willing to do it just to make the inspection shorter, and so they volunteer to do it, but you are not obligated by any means to fulfill that investigator's request. There are unusual circumstances where certain significant public health hazard arises where they need to get into your firm immediately, and those are not the typical inspectional type of requests that FDA comes out with. Those are the for-cause emergency need type of inspections. Next slide, please. So typically FDA conducts, the cornerstone of their inspectional program is current good manufacturing practices or quality system inspections. This is the broad breadth of inspections that FDA typically conducts, many thousand throughout the year, both the United States as well as throughout the world. The purpose of these inspections are to ensure conformance with the quality systems or the cGMPs that are outlined in the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21. Keep in mind that an FDA inspection is a snapshot in time only based upon what the investigator was able to observe during the time at your firm. For the 3, 5 days, 2 weeks, that's all they can report on. At the end of the day, you are responsible for and are expected to be in full compliance with all the applicable portions of the quality system or cGMP regulations. Cannot go back and say, well, I passed FDA's inspection last time, so therefore I'm golden. You're only golden for what they observed. And at the end of the day, even your 483s, if you're left with a list of observations, indicates that these are just the observations made during the term of this inspection, and you have this obligation to make sure you are in full compliance with all requirements. FDA also conducts pre-approval inspections to support NDAs, PMAs, licensing agreements, bioresearch monitoring inspections that also may be tied to those approvals. And obviously, they also conduct what are known as for-cause inspections. For-cause inspections are to follow up on an increase or a significant adverse event or an MDR report that may perhaps be catastrophic. They see escalating number of reports. They see different things, different issues that may be percolating that may be making them concerned. A certain increase in recalls or class 1 recalls would prompt a for-cause inspection. Customer and trade complaints, again, depending upon the significance of those complaints, can they have an impact on public health? Some are handled by letter, some are handled by, again, for-cause inspections. Whistleblower reports, which unfortunately are growing in scope, where they have an obligation to follow up on those type of things. Perhaps there's a second set of books. Perhaps there are other things that are going on at a firm that becomes a concern of the agency, and they want to check it out to see if it's in fact true or not. And similarly, bioresearch monitoring inspections that are undertaken to support clinical studies to assure that you are following protocols. These are conducted at the investigator sites as well as the sponsors. Make sure documents are being maintained contemporaneously, that there's no diversion of product, etc. It's important to also understand FDA's view on basic quality assurance principles. The most important things are that the quality, safety, and effectiveness needs to be designed into your products. It cannot be inspected or tested into the finished product. It will fall on deaf ears at FDA to hear, but we did finished product testing and everything is fine. They want to assure there is a requirement, the regulations expect that design controls, quality by design, be incorporated in all your manufacturing procedures to assure that that product was designed properly. The design inputs meet the design outputs, and it will function as you intended and meet the requirements for what you intended. So each step of the manufacturing process should be controlled to maximize the probability. This is generally done through validation or verification of processes that the finished product will meet all its specifications and design characteristics. Next slide. This is an extremely important slide so that you understand FDA's views of cGMPs and quality systems. They will focus during these inspections on how the product is manufactured. The actual quality of the finished product, while important, is relatively unimportant in terms of a quality system compliance. If the product's not manufactured in compliance with the cGMPs of the quality system, it's deemed adulterated and subject to potential regulatory action, even if it meets specifications and is safe and effective. There have been cases many years ago where FDA would adjoin a firm. The firm would say to the judge, "Your Honor, our product meets its specifications." And FDA's argument was because they didn't have control over the processes of that manufacturing plant. In fact, they couldn't guarantee that every lot would meet its specifications, and FDA won that battle. So it's important to understand they're there to see that they're following, that your procedures are adequate, and that you're following them. Executing procedures is extremely critical. If somebody walks through your floor and sees that they're doing something that's not contained in the work instructions, they're going to wonder why. And it's important that you be able to establish that everybody meets and understands those criteria. Next slide, please. So FDA's authority to inspect. Understand that FDA does have that authority. We can go on to the next slide. Thanks. Consent is not the basis on which FDA inspection is conducted. Permission or authorization by the company to inspect is not required. If you refuse, you delay, you deny, or you limit an inspection, you are adulterating the products at that firm. Those are recent congressional changes to the statute that affect both device and drug firms. Refusal to permit an inspection is in violation of the Act. And if FDA deems necessary or sees the need, they have an opportunity to request an administrative inspection warrant to come in to visit your firm. That doesn't necessarily play well as far as having a cooperative environment and a good corporate citizen impression with FDA. And if they believe there's some fraudulent activity going on, they can seek a search warrant as well. Most often that's associated with the Office of Criminal Investigations, but there have been times where FDA on the civil side has sought search warrants as well if they believe there are fraudulent activities ongoing. Next slide, please. So Section 704A of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act provides FDA the authority to enter and inspect regulated facilities, again, at the reasonable times, reasonable limits, and in a reasonable manner. And it authorizes, 704E authorizes FDA to inspect or copy records, reports, files, papers, processes, controls, and facilities pertaining to adverse event reports. So if they are there, especially to follow up on adverse events or MDR reports that are associated with your products, they have an opportunity to dig deeper than just looking at that report. They have access to everything that goes behind it. And it's your responsibility to cooperate with FDA in that manner, failure of which, again, could result in a determination of refusal, denying, or limiting an inspection. Again, note that the term reasonable is never defined by FDA, but generally speaking, they cooperate with a firm's normal business hours. Next slide, please. So factors that may increase the likelihood or frequency of inspection. Several years ago, the biennial inspection, every 2-year inspection requirement was eliminated for pharmaceuticals, and most recently in the recent congressional legislation for devices as well. And rather than have a typical every 2-year inspection rate, the Congress gave the agency to develop risk-based factors to determine when an inspection will be conducted and put on a firm's work plan assignment. So basically, the factors that FDA considers are listed here. Obviously, prior inspectional history, if you've had poor inspections in the past, that's going to be a continuing annoying concern at FDA that requires them to come and do follow-up inspections. That would include follow-up to warning letters, untitled letters, etc., where FDA believes that they have a responsibility to go in to make sure promised corrections have been implemented. They obviously want to conduct a baseline inspection at newly registered firms so that they know whether or not you have the capability to manufacture your product. Firms that have a poor history of fulfilling promised corrections based upon reinspection, those will definitely get inspections versus a follow-up inspection versus a firm that historically over the years, they say they've done something, they've implemented, and they continue to implement it. FDA has greater confidence in those firms that may not follow up as quickly. If they monitor sudden changes to adverse event or MDR reporting rates or particular problems with a product or specific outcomes that potentially are catastrophic, they're going to want to come in to see that. Increasing number of recalls, and especially class 1 recalls, will prompt an inspection. If you have a pending NDA inspection or a PMA inspection, recidivism in the medical device world, firms that have been operating in violation of the Act receive a warning letter, they come out of compliance, and then over several years, they fall back out of compliance. FDA Center for Devices has a recidivist warning letter option for them to issue to those firms, and a pattern of recidivism is one that they will follow up on. Level of risk of products involved. If you have specifically significantly challenging products to manufacture or very high-risk products or new and novel technologies, FDA is going to want to come in and inspect more frequently at your firm than one that makes a more sedentary product, one that's not as challenging to manufacture or might not be as clinically significant as one of your competitors. So obviously, if you're manufacturing a sterile product versus a non-sterile product, and even within sterility, aseptic processing is a more challenging process than some other types of sterilization. These are the factors that FDA weighs in determining how frequently they may inspect your firm. Next slide, please. So the statutory requirements, a device or drug shall be deemed adulterated if you are not manufacturing in conformance with the quality system or cGMPs. And that includes its manufacture, packing, storage, or installation are not in conformity with the applicable requirements. And that adulterates your product, and then it is therefore a prohibited act for you to introduce or deliver for introduction into interstate commerce any food, drug, device, cosmetic, or tobacco product that's adulterated or misbranded. So if you're manufacturing out of conformance with the cGMP or quality system, you have adulterated product, and if you are shipping it, you now are in violation of a prohibited act, and FDA has the potential, albeit fairly rare, I might add, the potential to take action if they deem fit. Next slide, please. So the scope of FDA's inspection authority at your site, they have the ability to look at facilities that are used to design, manufacture, distributed FDA-regulated products, and that includes contract design houses, vehicles used to hold or transport pharmaceuticals or medical devices. FDA has seized trailers full of product. There are firms that used to, FDA would come in the front door and the violated product would go out the back door and be stored in tractor trailers and then sealed. FDA would become aware of it, and FDA would freeze that trailer on site. There are many times that FDA has seized trailers in transport. So they do have access to all your transport vehicles as well, including rental ones. They are entitled to look at raw materials and components, any kind of manufacturing equipment. Obviously, they want to make sure it's been installed properly, all part of the validation process. Any finished and unfinished pharmaceuticals, same goes to medical devices. any containers used to manufacture, store, or distribute pharmaceuticals. Similarly, any type of storage containers that are used for medical devices. All the labeling, they're entitled to inspect it. They will generally collect it, and it will be reviewed at headquarters. The investigators generally do not comment on labeling, but they will make sure you have adequate labeling controls, that you have adequate proofing, storage, and accountability for labels. Records showing the movement of products in interstate commerce, which provides FDA the jurisdiction over the product and at the firm. All records pertaining to adverse events, recalls, MDRs, etc. And all records required by the cGMP or the quality system regulation, including drug master files, device master records, batch records, device history records, product reviews, complaint files. So FDA has pretty far-reaching authority to inspect these items during an inspection, and they try to make it as painless as possible for the firm that's hosting that inspection. You may have 2 streams of people in there, or 3 streams, or even 4 streams. So it does increase your challenge to stay abreast of everything that they are looking at. And it's important for you to document what they have looked at your firm. So should any questions arise after the inspection, you'll be able to follow up appropriately. Next slide, please. FDA does not have the authority to inspect certain things as well, and it's up to you to be able to understand that and, in fact, deny FDA the ability to cover these items. FDA investigators are trained to ask for the sky, the moon, and the stars. It's up to you to be able to know what they are and are not entitled to during an inspection. They are not entitled, for example, to financial data, how much profit you make or anything like that. They may ask you for your annual sales, but they're not entitled to know your margins. They're not entitled to know certain financial data other than gross numbers. They will ask you what percentage of the market you have. It's interesting how most firms will say they have the lion's share of it. They will ask for sales data. They're not entitled to any of that other than distribution information. They are entitled to know where that product has been shipped. They are not entitled to pricing information, any profits or anything along that line. FDA really does not care about dollars. That's not an argument that holds water. Even when a recall is taking place, they know that they will not necessarily, you will not necessarily get the ear of FDA if you say, well, these products cost a lot of money, it's going to put us out of business. It's all about the public health. They are not entitled to information regarding personnel other than qualifications for positions. They're not entitled to home addresses. They're not entitled to salaries, promotions, or anything along those lines. They're not entitled, and this is really important, to records or reports resulting from internal audits, management reviews, and supplier audits. Those are outside the scope. The premise here is they want you the opportunity to self-correct when a problem has been identified. They want you during your internal audits to feel free to identify problems and correct them and not play gotcha. But they do have the authority to examine written procedures established for those internal reviews, management reviews, supplier audits, and can request a written certification that these activities have been performed and documented, and they are entitled to any CAPAs that have been opened as a result of it. Now, one can argue sharing the CAPAs is really giving them the information or the outcome of those audits. But on the other hand, it's also showing that your efforts were robust enough to identify problems and take the appropriate corrective actions and or preventive actions to prevent violative product from entering commerce. So there are things that they are prohibited from getting exactly, but they can get some background information to provide them the assurance that it's being conducted appropriately. Next slide, please. So what to expect during an inspection? What must FDA do? As I mentioned before, they need to issue a 482 notice of inspection to the owner, operator, or agent in charge. If they happen to show up and people are at a meeting, They will ask, well, who's in charge? And if everybody points their finger somewhere else, it's not uncommon for them to say, well, if there was a fire, who would be in charge? And that's the person that they will issue that notice of inspection to. If several people from FDA are coming to your site to do this inspection, and 3 or 4 and one gets lost and they have to have the notice of inspection and they ask you to start the inspection before that person shows up who's carrying the notice of inspection, do not allow it. They're not entitled to do anything until that notice of inspection does issue. If they take any samples from your firm, they are required to provide a 484 receipt for samples, for any samples that are collected. They are supposed to offer you payment for those samples at the wholesale price for those products. Upon completion of an inspection, they may provide to you, as I mentioned, the FDA 483 list of observations. Your goal is not to receive one. Your goal is to have an NAI, or no action indicated, inspection with no observations provided. They may as well, very frequently, attempt to obtain a signed affidavit to document distribution of a specific product and or to document interstate commerce to establish jurisdiction. We recommend, as most law firms as well will recommend, not to sign those affidavits. FDA basically understands that. They have often said, we know you have a job to do, we have a job to do. It is recommended that they not be signed, that you will not allow them to read it to you or to listen to it. And we have had clients that literally have walked out of a room where the investigator insisted on reading it. It has happened where investigators purposely put in misinformation for you to correct. And they say, well, you don't have to sign it, just read it. And once you say, well, that's not right, they will then verify that you've read it because you made the necessary correction. So it's in your best interest not to sign those affidavits to document the interstate commerce. You don't know what it's going to be used for. You don't know if it's just simply for jurisdiction or to document shipment of violative product. So again, there's no requirement on your behalf to make sure you do it. Next slide, please. So what you must do during an inspection. Most firms today have a front room and a back room, or a war room. The front room is where all the action is from an FDA inspection point of view. That's where the investigators spend most of their time. In fact, I've fortunately, but unfortunately, have observed investigators who's never even done a walkthrough at a firm. They spend the entire time in the front room. You can't, at the end of the day, ask them what takes place at that factory, and that's not the way an inspection is supposed to take place. But most of the time, that's where the investigators spend their time, is in the front room. That's where you will be called upon to speak to investigators, subject matter expert, or SMEs or SMEs will be called upon to provide documentation and justification as to what actions you took to address various issues or to describe your policies and procedures. They will ask questions. They will spend most of their time reviewing documents. Your staff and SME should be well prepared. We do a lot of SME prep with our clients in advance of an inspection to make sure that the information flows easily and that you can answer typical FDA type questions during that inspection. Someone in your firm should be scribing this. Somebody should be taking notes. Typically, there's somebody scribing it so it can be read throughout your firm. Same thing, somebody is sending requests for documents that the investigator is asking for to people in the back room so that they could start preparing them. And that somebody as well in that room, it's generally the same person, will track receipt when those documents come back into the front room, the date and the time, so that FDA doesn't have an argument that they have been waiting or not waiting too long to receive documents requested. But generally, at the end of the day, there's paper everywhere. It's important that you track that paper, you know what you share, you keep copies of everything you provide FDA. Should a question come up 3 or 5 or 6 days after that inspection about where were they really going with it, you have a copy of what they have. In the back room, which is really the glue of an entire investigation and ongoing inspection, because there's a tremendous amount of work going on back there, that's where they respond to requests for any kind of documents, policies, procedures, work instructions, CAPAs, etc. That's where an SME will go first to find out what is going on, what's the tenor of the room in the front room, what type of questions are they asking, what are you being pulled into to answer about. So that's generally where you'll go to get educated as to what's going on before you walk into that front room. What's going on in there? There's generally screens where the scribe has been transmitting everything that has been going on in the front room. There'll be individual chats that are going on, IMs between different employees. There are documents that are being pulled, copied, reviewed, and be sure to review documents before they go back into the front room to make sure they're complete, they're responsive, and that they're accurate. Document requests are being tracked upon receipt and fulfillment. Again, that timeliness issue, so that FDA doesn't have a basis to say you're delaying an inspection. And understand, you should be clear up front to FDA what they should expect is document turnaround. There are going to be some limitations at times for you to be able to get documents as quickly as they may like. But other documents, for example, such as your procedures, in advance of an inspection, you should be ready to get those ready, up and going, and ready to hand them as soon as they ask for them. Again, SMEs are prepped. Runners are in and out, taking documents to the front room as they're ready. And it's not unusual where you have a number of ongoing requests going at the same time. So make sure you have adequate resources available as far as supplies, etc., and color code multiple requests if there are several streams going on. Next slide, please. So how can you prepare for this? Every firm should have audit procedures developed and prepped by be ready for them with mock audits. You should be ready, audit ready at all times. Even the people at your front gate, even if it's a security guard, that if FDA shows up and shows their credentials and they provide them access to your area, to your facility, they should be telephoning somebody immediately. FDA is here. Same thing with any receptionist, secretary. They should have a call down list. They should know how to react, how to tell that investigator to please have a seat until somebody comes, generally the management rep. But everybody should be practicing that through mock audits to make sure everybody knows their roles, including IT, who may need to set up conference rooms to accommodate the investigators and you as well with computers and support. Make sure your tables of organizations are up to date, who's in charge, who's responsible for different organizations within your organization. You should have an up-to-date opening presentation about your firm, the floor plan, who's responsible for what are the products you manufacture. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It would be great if you could have an actual demo there so an investigator can understand the product and the device that you are manufacturing. Know the scope of the inspection. Ask them, why are you here? Is this a routine inspection? Is this a for-cause inspection? Are you following up? Ask them what that purpose of that inspection. It may start as a typical routine surveillance inspection, and over time, as things develop or they find things, they may decide to focus in different areas. But especially if it's a medical device firm where those inspections are typically pre-announced 3 to 5 days in advance, you should be able to ask what's the purpose of the inspection. Always have copies of your current procedures available for review. If you can understand the profile of an FDA investigator, you used to be able to get it from FDA Zilla, now GovZilla, others. Ask around, know what, hey, Steve Niedelman showing up, what's he like, what does he do, what's his experience? Be sure to listen carefully to all the questions and only respond to those questions within your knowledge and responsibility. If you don't know, you don't know. Don't hesitate inserting your foot in your mouth. Rather say, it's a great question, I'll get you the answer. And then be sure, very critically, to follow your company procedures. Next slide, please. Investigative techniques, you know, you're dealing with people, so it's different strokes for different folks. Some are slow and methodical. It's like watching paint dry till they ask the next question. Others are very rapid fire. You can't even keep up with their questions. They're on question 3 before you're answering question 1. No matter what the style, all investigators share the same goal of determining compliance with the laws and regulations. You can't have somebody removed because you don't like their style. You can't say that that's bad behavior. There have been investigators where we've had behavioral problems, some way beyond style. When you know there's a behavior problem, there'll be one. Anticipate the same question to be asked several times in different ways, in circular way. It's not because they didn't understand your answer. It's not because of anything. They want to make sure they're getting consistent answers. They want to make sure that they are getting consistent answers from different people to the same problem. Because once they don't, they start asking, well, who's not telling the truth? And then everybody becomes suspicious. As I mentioned, expect some questions to be circular. And don't be lured into a false sense of friendship. Everything that you say is on the record. It may not appear on the 483, but it could appear in the inspection report that the investigator writes up. Next slide, please. So what will FDA do during an inspection? They're obviously going to ask questions. Oftentimes, they're very probing and deep, and they will be very calculated and deal into technical issues. And some are going to be as plain as the nose in your face as to why did you do this? And then you have to, be prepared for both ends of the spectrum. As I mentioned, often the same question is asked several ways. They will ask and review documents, spend most of their time, including records, files, papers, processes, etc., regarding receipt and testing of materials, incoming inspection, production records, testing equipment and maintenance records. Are you getting calibrations according to schedule? Are you meeting that manufacturer's instructions? They will obviously look at your procedures, and they will walk the floor to make sure that you are in fact following those procedures. And there are many other things that they're going to ask for throughout an inspection. Every firm is going to be different. There's no one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach. Next slide, please. FDA will also walk through a firm. Typically, most investigators will do a walkthrough at the inspection of the inspection to get a feel for what's going on, what's being currently manufactured. They will frequently pick a product and follow it. Generally, the most significant product being manufactured at the time of their inspection. So they will do a walkthrough. Similarly, as they're going through their record review, they may see a process or procedure that they might not think aligned with what was exactly being conducted. So they may revisit the operation to verify compliance with the procedure. They are there to compare answers to your documents. So if they ask you a question and your documents don't align, answers to answers, if two people are asked the same question, is their response similar? And they understand that if somebody on the line who's an hourly worker gets questioned by FDA, they're going to be extremely nervous. And that's one of the benefits of a mock audit, is to get those people accustomed to it. But nonetheless, they want to make sure that everybody is pretty much in alignment. They understand there's nervousness on the floor, but at the same time, again, at the end of the day, is the answer similar? They're going to check answers and documents to what they've observed. They will check answers, documents, and observations to previous submissions and to previous observations to assure that your promised corrections were confirmed according to your responses. And of course, they will interview personnel from the floor. They will, from executives to the CEO, et cetera, if they wish. Next slide, please. Do investigators provide feedback? Yes, they do. If you ask them, they do daily updates. They will tell you, they will conduct wrap-up meetings. They will discuss unfinished and open issues. They will discuss issues of concern, those that will definitely be 483 observations. And these provide you an opportunity that if a certain thing is getting off track, or they'd ask the wrong person for that information and you have the documentation, provide you the opportunity for the next day to get the inspection back on track and give the information to the investigator that may have been missing. So they will sometimes verify that an observation was made and verify that the correction was made on their 483. So these daily updates are pretty important. Next slide, please. Closeout meeting with management at the end of the inspection. Hopefully no 483 is presented, but if there is, the most responsible people at the firm should be at that closeout meeting. It provides a certain cultural response versus not thinking, top management not thinking it's important enough to be present. It provides you opportunities to clarify any observations. I suggest that you caucus among yourselves before the investigators leave to make sure you understand those observations, because you have 15 days to provide a response. And if you don't really understand observation 8 now, and you want to find out about it 5 days from now and ask for clarification, and that investigator's on a foreign inspection, you're out of luck. So it's important that you make sure you understand those observations that you're going to have to respond to at the time of the meeting. Device firms have the opportunity to annotate their corrections. They can promise to corrected and verified by the investigator, corrected but not verified by the investigator, and under consideration. Next slide, please. Does everything go on a 483? No, limited to what's required by law. There are many topics that don't go on 483s. For example, verification of registration and listing, labeling violations. They may collect labels, but they're generally reviewed by the center. Similarly, product approval issues, NDA issues, 510K issues for devices, PMA issues, de novos, etc. Significant adverse event reporting or appropriate adverse event reporting, whether it be an adverse event or an MDR, unless they have been at your firm, they have provided the information to the center, and through the inspection, before it concludes, they have gotten a review from the center that they can support the observation the investigator made. That yes, this should have been an MDR reportable event or an adverse event reportable situation. Yes, this change to this product required a new application to the agency, and they have been at your firm long enough that they got that feedback from the center. So again, the investigators don't have the ability to make that determination, but they do get the information back. Those are the only situations where that type of information should appear on a 483. Next slide, please. Company responses, you have 15 working days to get that response in for FDA to be able to consider it before they consider what their next action is. It should address the systemic issues as well as the individual specific violation and the specific site that they used as an example. You should generally, most firms open CAPAs, corrective actions and preventive actions, to demonstrate to FDA that these corrective actions will be taken to prevent their recurrence. Typically, if it's involving perhaps a poor policy on adverse event reporting, your criteria doesn't align with the agencies, they may ask you to do a retrospective review, or you generally volunteer to do those retrospective reviews. And generally, most firms have monthly or bi-monthly updates to the agency demonstrating their commitment and their progress towards compliance. What's absolutely essential is that you provide them objective evidence in your responses to demonstrate that you're doing what you're promising to do. Without that, it's just like saying, yeah, we're going to change our systems. Well, how are you going to change your systems? You need to be able to provide that documentation and provide it in your response so that they have something to review and be able to provide you feedback on. Next slide, please. FDA's reaction to your response, they'll assess the findings, they'll review for repeat observations. They do not look favorably upon repeat observations. They can generate enforcement actions. They will assess the adequacy of your response and your progress during monthly progress reports or bi-monthly. For those of you who think they don't review them, I can tell you our clients frequently they have a promised correction date. They'll get an email from FDA saying, we were waiting for your progress report on the 29th. We noticed we didn't receive it. They do monitor it. They do review them. They do stay up to date. They may choose to re-inspect to verify that those corrections have been made. They classify an inspection either as OAI, official action indicated, which means it will result in a warning letter, an injunction, a prosecution, etc. Voluntary action indicated, yes, you have deviations from the different requirements, but they're not that significant, and we believe the firm can manage them. And then mostly NAI, no action indicated. And you'd be interested to know about better than half of all the inspections the FDA undertakes are no action indicated. They have not found any observations during your inspection, which is kudos to the industry. Again, if your response is inadequate, it can result in a warning letter, which failure to correct may result in additional actions such as seizure, injunction, or prosecution, civil money penalties for devices. Could result in a regulatory meeting where top management is invited to meet with FDA face-to-face. An injunction, which requires negotiation of a consent decree. For those OUS firms, an import alert or detention without physical examination, stop the product from coming into the United States. The medical devices, a recidivist warning letter for those firms that come in and out of compliance. And then there are other actions as well. So next slide, please. The do's and don'ts. We'll go through these quickly. Always be courteous, respectful, develop trust, be factual and objective. Do not insert your foot in your mouth. If you don't know, you don't know. Demonstrate a willingness to listen and understand FDA's concerns. Don't jump to conclusions or think that you know the next question. Remember, the investigator's goal is evidence gathering and exercise care in promising corrections. You don't want to necessarily speak on behalf of your firm and say, oh yeah, we're going to take the product off the market when management might not agree with that. So be careful and resist informal casual discussions. Everything's on the record. Next slide, please. Listen to the questions, seek clarification. If you could say, can you please clarify? Could you please provide the example of what you're looking for? If you don't know, say, I don't know, and offer to seek the answer. That's a great question. I'm not the right person. I'm not the right SME. We will get you the answer to that question. We'll get you the right person to speak to. Don't try to answer every question that they ask. You're much better off saying, I don't know. We will get the answer. Be concise, direct, and honest in your responses. Answer yes or no to yes or no type questions. Stop talking when you've answered the question. They will use and implement pregnant pauses, thinking that you feel the need to add more. Don't. Be very reserved in that respect. Next slide, please. Most importantly, the do nots. Don't use or try to avoid the firm's jargon or acronyms that FDA people may not understand at all. It'll only contribute to confusion. Trust me, they go into tons of firms. Everybody has their own jargon and their own acronyms. You want to make sure they understand what you're saying. Don't comment on the quality inspection and saying, yeah, we didn't do so well, are we? Or we're not doing so well. Or, yeah, I knew Joe wasn't the Kappa guy that should be in there. I knew he'd screw things. Don't offer them anything. Just keep the inspection going. Don't comment on it. Again, don't answer questions you know the answer to. Don't argue among yourselves. Seek a caucus break if two of you have differing opinions to the same issue. Ask for a bio break. Ask for a caucus break. Get your message. You are representing your firm. You want to make sure you speak with one tongue. Do not convey arrogance or impatience. Some of those simple questions they're asking, don't come back with, that's the dumbest question in the world. Don't just accept them. They're there, and they are sometimes, some of these simple questions are the hardest ones to answer. You might really not know why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you doing that? You know what? I really don't know. So make sure, and don't make off-the-record comments or off-the-record statements. Don't befriend these guys. They will try to do so. Nothing is off the record. Next slide, please. Do not be intimidated by the pregnant pauses, as I mentioned. Don't be dismissive of FDA's concerns. Don't think, well, yeah, that's not important. That's not going to be a big thing, and all of a sudden you get a warning letter for it. Avoid making admissions, and this goes for your responses too. Don't say, yeah, we don't have a good Kappa system. Do it in a proactive way. The steps we're taking to address this observation are Don't say, yeah, we really don't have, we don't pay attention to. Just don't make admissions. Avoid that, because they will use that in future actions where they say the firm admitted that they don't do these things correctly. So do not volunteer information not corrected, and everything should go fine. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, these inspections are the eyes and ears of FDA. These are the guys that, they pull in the information. Some of it is digested by the centers, but at the end of the day, these inspections, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. They're detailed, they're comprehensive, they present that snapshot in time. They are not intended to be used as the tool by industry to measure compliance. You're expected to be fully compliant to all the requirements, not just what FDA looked at during the inspection. Failure to come out with a good, clean inspection can impact your ability to get products approved, certificates for foreign governments, and government contracts issued. So there can be a profound economic impact to your firm. And non-compliance with regulations do have serious implications with enforcement actions that the agency has options. So with that, I conclude. I welcome the opportunity for any questions that we may have. And Taylor, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, so right now we have time for about 2 or 3 questions. I know we had a lot more than that come in, so I will get with Steven after and get everything answered for you. Our first question is, what is an appropriate response if an FDA investigator asks for items that they do not have the authority to inspect?
Thank you. We appreciate your question. We understand. However, it's our understanding and our belief that you just don't have the authority for that information. We'll take that under advisement, but we respectfully disagree with your request and will not be providing it.
Wonderful. Question number 2. Does the EIR provide a history of the inspection to provide a pass-fail decision?
Yes, the EIR, the Establishment Inspection Report, which is only available back to the firm as long as the inspection is classified either the voluntary action indicated or no action indicated. If you can't get a copy of your inspection report, that generally means you've been classified as OAI. But establishment inspection reports provide full firm histories. They include history of past inspections. They're fairly detailed, unless, again, if you're an NAI firm, they might just write up a summary of observations. But they provide full detail, including the people that were interviewed, the people that were spoken to, and those informal conversations as well. So yes, they're pretty detailed, and they do provide a history of everything that went on.
Perfect. And then can extra observations be included in the EIR that weren't in the 483 at the end of the inspection?
Yeah, so in the 483 is only those items that they believe are significant observations that failure to correct could result in violations. They will have in their inspection report, and they will offer these also at the time the 483 is issued, opportunities for improvement, suggestions, recommendations that don't raise to the level of 483 observations. And those will definitely be included in the establishment inspection report. I may warn those that get those voluntary recommendations or suggestions or opportunities for improvement that you should not take them lightly. They should be addressed. They should be addressed in your response to any kind of findings that you are addressing them, because if you fail to do it the next time, because they are documented in that establishment inspection report, failure to address them may turn into 483s next time because you didn't take heed of the investigator and you failed to think they were significant.
Perfect. And then just a reminder to everyone, this is the last question, but Steve and I will get together afterwards to make sure all the other ones are accounted for. The last question, how much communication and direction is there between the FDA and their agent in the field during an inspection?
Between the center, I assume that's between the center and the investigators. If it's a typical work plan inspection, there's generally not much unless there are issues that have arisen that the investigators will seek guidance or information from the center for. If it's a center-driven inspection, a directed inspection that's being driven by the center, there will be some constant communication between the investigators back to the center as to what they've observed. In fact, some have regularly scheduled meetings back to address what they are observing during the inspection. So it all depends upon the type of inspection, who initiated it, and what are the issues at hand. If they are of a scientific and technical nature, the center will play a more active role than if it's just a typical GMP inspection that the firm does not have a history with, or there are no significant or imminent problems.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Steven, and thank you everyone for attending today. Like I said, we will get these questions together, send over the slides and the presentation video to you all. If you have any questions that come up throughout the day or tomorrow, you can send them my way and I will get in contact with Steven to get everything done for you. But thank you for attending, and that concludes today's webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.